Hey, Nick here, and today we're going to take a look at Severed from Drinkbox Studios, which was probably actually my favorite game that I got to see at PlayStation Experience this past weekend. Now, Severed is the new game from the team who brought us Guacamelee and Mutant Blob's Attack, but this game is pretty dramatically different from those. So right off the bat, you can see that it's sort of a first-person exploration or adventure-based game, almost a dungeon crawler, but it has some pretty significant differences from those type of games, notably the art style, which I think is just kind of undeniably gorgeous. The color, I mean, like, if you've played Guacamelee, you know that they're incredible with color, and you see a lot of that here. So here's just sort of the basic story setup. It's very little in terms of story, very lightly explained. I love this scene. Yeah, just fantastic use of sound design and environmental storytelling here. It's all told non-verbally, at least so far, which I really like. So here's the elevator pitch that I've come up with for Severed. So essentially, it's like a mix of something like a Legend of Grimrock style dungeon crawler and Fruit Ninja, or I don't know. I think maybe a better comparison would be Skyward Sword, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. And you'll see why in a minute. So right now we are sort of exploring what appears to be the wrecked home of the protagonist, is how I'm choosing to interpret it right now. And you are playing as a girl who, as best I can tell, has no name yet, who had her arm severed. Sasha, oh, there you go. See? I do not know what I'm talking about. So Sasha has her arm severed through some sort of traumatic event that I don't think we see. And here's the tutorial. So essentially, you just swipe against your enemies to attack them. Pretty intuitive. And then countering attacks, you swipe in the opposite direction. So you can kind of see what's happening there. But essentially, when this maternal figure attacks you, you just swipe diagonally in the opposite direction to counter it. And once you do that, you can kind of see that it opens up the opponent for a counterattack. So essentially what that just means is more swiping. So you swipe, and then they are, for a second, stunned, and you can get some hits in on them. But once they're no longer stunned, if you hit them, you kind of flinch a little bit, and the camera tilts down, and you lose some time there. Alrighty. Just get a little health here. And here is sort of where the dungeon crawling begins in earnest. I played through this entire demo at PSX in one sitting, and it felt like no time at all. I really wanted to see more. So here's sort of the first real enemy encounter. Love this monster design here. So essentially, you can kind of see it rear its arm back to swipe at you, and then it counters right there, it flinches, and then you just swipe on it a whole bunch of times. And the reason I make the Skyward Sword comparison is because there were enemies in Skyward Sword where, you know, they would hold their arms in certain ways or block in certain ways that left an opening. These enemies do sort of a similar thing too. One of my favorite details about this game also is that in most of those like grid-based, like Etrian Odyssey-style dungeon crawling games, the camera snaps in cardinal directions. And this game doesn't do that at all. You have a complete freedom of movement to just sort of tilt around and look anywhere you wish. This is a really fun enemy to fight right here. So you kind of have to swipe on him to get his growth down, and then it'll open his eye. And right now it seems pretty simple, but I think what's interesting about that enemy gets revealed a little bit later in this demo. But yeah, these just being able to look in any direction really adds a great sense of, I think, depth to these environments. Makes everything look and feel a lot more 3D than it is. And I'm just obsessed with this game's art style. It's definitely the game that stuck with me the most out of everything I got to play at this year's event. So here's another crucial mechanic. As you get in hits on enemies, you sort of fill this meter in the upper left. And as that meter fills, you are sort of building towards a charge attack. And how that works is you tap, instead of swiping, you just tap on an enemy who's stunned, who's vulnerable, and it opens them up for this sort of bullet time sequence. I'll just let you watch. Here. Yeah, and so not only are you dismembering these opponents, you actually pick up the items that drop off of them and are used as currency for your upgrade system. So right here, the sever time is being increased, so the amount of time that you're in that sort of bullet time slow-mo state is increased, so you have more time to hit all the things you need to swipe. But I adore that mechanic, that it's almost like a really elegant revenge tale here, where you got your arm cut off, now you're gonna go cut off everyone else's arms, almost like on some Dead Space type shit. Also of note is that all the music in this game is provided by Yamantaka / Sonic Titan, who is like a really rad sort of... I don't know what genre you'd classify them as, but they're like a really sort of cool indie group, also Canadian, just like Drinkbox. So here's why this enemy is interesting that I was talking about earlier. This is sort of the first time you fight multiple enemies at once, and it requires you to kind of keep your eye on those attack meters at the bottom of the screen. The yellow circle indicates how long until their next attack, and then the redness indicates how much health they have left. So essentially, you're trying to manage both of these dudes at once, keeping their growths down and sort of making sure you're never being attacked. Which is really cool, and I think where the game starts to get its depth from. Fighting these individual enemies is fun and interesting, but if you were just fighting one enemy at a time for the entire game, I think it would get pretty boring pretty quickly. But here, you start having to manage multiple enemies, which I think is the core of the game. So, as you can see, you did a dismemberment on that guy, grabbed his eyeball out, and that's what the keys look like in this universe, which is really cool. So, predictably, you put the butthole key in the butthole door, and now you're free to progress. Another locked door here. And it's helpful, like, I found that, and maybe it's just true for this early area, but there's a pretty linear progression through this space at least. I never found myself getting lost or anything. This is a fun enemy to fight. The area through which you are allowed to swipe is kind of randomly determined on this 5x5 grid, so it requires a decent amount of precision. I can't wait to see what the late game enemies look like, because if the early game enemies are this interesting, I am thrilled. So let's go behind the waterfall, as Adam Boyes alluded to in his PSX keynote. There's your opening. Alrighty. This is just a beautiful vista here. Look at the waves, like the pastel pink and blue sunset waves on the water there. It's I feel like we're getting to the point now where every few months you'll find an indie game that it's impossible not to be smitten by the look of, but this is just like on another level. It's a fun guy to fight. So he'll just sort of grab part of his outer ring, which opens him up to some very precise eyeball slashes that you gotta do on any one of his 7 eyes. Alrighty, here's the end of this little boss encounter. Or enemy encounter. I should point out that not all... there we go, got the key. So one thing that they allude to later in the game is that when you fight bosses, you'll unlock something called totems, which are essentially these pieces of armor that give you new abilities. So beyond just the upgrade tree stuff that you saw on that pause screen, there's actually more to it as well. So this is just fighting 2 of these dudes at once. And it's cool because it kind of keeps you always doing something. And I should point out also that you're controlling this game not only with the touchscreen. So like you're using the Vita's touchscreen for all the attacking, but then you're using the analog stick on the Vita to control your movement forward and backward through the dungeon, and then of course left and right. And the more enemies start showing up, the more I found that I was just constantly had something to do. Like the initial encounters with one enemy at a time, where you're sort of learning how that enemy works, are fun because you're learning a new thing, but there's a little bit of downtime. There's a lot of waiting for them to attack. Once you start fighting multiple dudes at a time, then it starts to feel a little more robust. Alright, here we go. A little extra damage. There's just so, like, the amount of unique art assets in every moment of this demo just boggled my mind. Like, ugh, like, this scene is so evocative. Another thing to note, you can swipe those crows away back there, if you wish. So here's kind of our first boss encounter. starts out pretty straightforward. It's hard to hit him with all these crows flying by. Blinded. I love that all the little red eyes on his body are crow's eyes, and they're blinking. It's so great. Again, it probably bears repeating that the music in this game is just already so fantastic. Alrighty. Gotta hit him with some bullet time. He's 2/3 dead. Alright, meter's full. There we go. There we go. We have chopped it down to a beautiful looking helmet. Which is kind of like the iconic thing that the protagonist wears in a lot of the promotional material that you've seen in the game, so... Ugh. Yeah, and so that's pretty much where the demo ends, but I just, it's such a promising teaser, and I am so thrilled to play some more of this game when it comes out in spring 2015 is the currently announced date. Yeah, that was a look at Severed. If you want to subscribe, I do videos like this all the time, and yeah, thanks for watching.